But here's the paradox: the walls you build to protect yourself also keep out the love you crave. Think of a time when you felt truly connected to someone. It wasn't because you were perfect, was it? It was because you were real. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the most profound act of courage. Imagine this: a young woman I once spoke to had spent years hiding her true feelings because she feared rejection. She convinced herself that she had to be strong by never needing anyone. But when she finally opened up to a friend about her struggles, she didn't find judgment. She found understanding. And that moment of vulnerability changed everything. What's one small way you can allow yourself to be more open today? Negative thinking often focuses on what's missing, what's wrong, or what's imperfect. But love grows when you focus on what's right. Think about someone you care for deeply, a partner, a friend, or even yourself. Take a moment to reflect on what you appreciate about them: their laugh, their loyalty, their patience. Gratitude has the power to shift your perspective from scarcity to abundance. Now, take it a step further, express it. A simple, heartfelt "I appreciate you" can heal wounds and strengthen bonds. Many of us hold on to past heartbreak like it's a shield. We think, if I keep this pain close, I'll remember to protect myself. But clinging to the past only weighs you down. I think of it like carrying a heavy bag filled with old grievances, regrets, and fears. How can you run toward love with that bag strapped to your back? You have to let it go. You might not forget, and that's okay, but you can forgive not just others, but yourself. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means you refuse to let it control you anymore. Love isn't a destination, it's a journey. There will be detours, bumps, and even breakdowns along the way. But every step, every effort brings you closer to the life and relationships you deserve. Picture this: you're planting a garden. At first, the soil might be rocky. The seeds may take time to sprout. But with patience, care, and consistent effort, those seeds bloom. The same is true for love. What if today you chose to plant the seeds of love in your own life? What if you decided to rewrite your story, embrace vulnerability, and nurture your relationships with gratitude and forgiveness? Take a deep breath. You are worthy of love not because of what you do or how perfect you are, but simply because you exist. Love is your birthright. Now, let's break free from the chains of negative thinking. The love you've been searching for is already within you, waiting to bloom. So, will you take the first step? Close your eyes for a moment and think about the thoughts that pass through your mind on a typical day. How many of those thoughts uplift you, inspire you, or make you feel proud of who you are? And how many seem to quietly undermine you, whispering doubts, fears, and criticisms? Negative self-talk often operates like background noise, so constant and subtle that we don't even realize how deeply it affects us. But make no mistake, these thoughts have power, shaping how we see ourselves and how we show up in the world. Let me share a story. There was a young man who constantly doubted himself in relationships. Anytime someone complimented him, he'd dismiss it. If a friend didn't respond to a message quickly, he'd assume they were upset with him. He told himself, "I'm not lovable. People always leave me. I'm too much." These weren't just passing thoughts, they became his truth, dictating how he behaved and the way he interpreted the world. Over time, these thoughts isolated him because he believed them so fully that he didn't allow others to prove him wrong. Does that sound familiar to you? Maybe not in those exact words, but perhaps in the way you sometimes criticize yourself. Negative self-talk often disguises itself as truth. You might think, "I'm just being honest with myself," but here's the catch: not every thought that enters your mind is true. Recognizing negative self-talk is the first step toward breaking free from it. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself, especially when you're faced with challenges or setbacks. Do you hear phrases like, "I always mess things up," or "Why do I even bother?" These are red flags, automatic thoughts that stem from past experiences, fears, or insecurities, but they're not reflective of your true self or your potential. Once you notice these thoughts, challenge them. Ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Is there evidence to support it? Or am I assuming the worst most of the time? You'll find that negative self-talk is based on fears, not facts. Take, for instance, a woman who constantly doubted her ability to connect with others. She'd tell herself, "I'm too awkward, no one wants to talk to me." But when she challenged that thought, she realized that people often smiled at her and enjoyed her company. The belief that she was awkward wasn't rooted in reality. It was a story she told herself for so long that she'd started to believe it. This process of challenging negative thoughts doesn't happen overnight. It's a skill you practice, like learning to reframe a bad habit. When you catch yourself saying, "I can't do this," replace it with, "I'll give it my best shot." When you think, "I'm not good enough," remind yourself, "I'm still growing," and that's okay. The goal isn't to eliminate negative thoughts entirely, that's impossible. It's to stop them from running your life. You have the power to rewrite the narrative in your mind, and when you do, everything else in your life will start to shift. Now think for a moment about the way you perceive yourself and your relationships, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and how others see us are like scripts that we live by. These scripts aren't always written with care. They're shaped by our past experiences, by the words of others, and by our fears and insecurities. Over time, we start to mistake them for the truth, and these stories become the lenses through which we see the world. But what if those lenses are distorted? Imagine someone who grew up feeling ignored or undervalued. They might carry that story into adulthood, telling themselves, I don't matter to people, my feelings aren't important. And with that script playing in their mind, they approach relationships hesitantly, doubting that anyone truly cares for them. When someone shows kindness, they brush it off as pity or obligation. When they face conflict, they assume it's their fault or a confirmation that they're not good enough. The story they tell themselves shapes every interaction, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. The reality is that these stories, though they may feel deeply ingrained, are not fixed. They are interpretations, not facts. Recognizing the script you've been following is the first step toward rewriting it. Ask yourself, what are the recurring thoughts or beliefs I hold about myself in relationships? Do I believe I'm unworthy of love? Do I assume people will abandon me? Do I fear that if I show my true self, I'll be rejected? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they are essential for uncovering the narratives that hold you back. Once you've identified your story, it's time to challenge it. Think of it as editing a draft. Look for evidence that contradicts the narrative you've been living by. For example, if your story is, I always ruin my relationships, pause and reflect, is that entirely true? Can you think of times when you've been caring, supportive, or forgiving? Relationships are complex, and one mistake doesn't define the entire picture. Rewriting your story also involves introducing new, empowering beliefs. Instead of I'm unworthy of love, begin to tell yourself I am deserving of love and kindness. Instead of I'll always be abandoned, remind yourself I can create strong, lasting connections. These new beliefs might feel unnatural at first, but that's because they're new. Like planting seeds, they need time and care to grow. One way to reinforce these new narratives is through intentional action. If you've always believed I'm not good at expressing my feelings, try sharing a small piece of your inner world with someone you trust. If your story is, people don't value me, start noticing the little ways others show they care: a smile, a thoughtful gesture, or a kind word. These moments are proof that your old script isn't the whole story. The story you tell yourself has immense power, but that power lies in your hands. You're both the author and the editor, and every day is a new opportunity to write a script that reflects your potential, your growth, and your capacity for love and connection. Vulnerability is one of the most misunderstood aspects of human connection. Many people think it's a weakness, a crack in their armor that leaves them exposed to judgment, rejection, or pain. But if you look closely, you'll see that vulnerability is not a flaw, it's a doorway. It's the bridge that connects one heart to another, the space where real relationships are built. Yet so many of us fear it, and for good reason. Perhaps you've been hurt before, or maybe you've been taught that showing emotion is a sign of fragility. Imagine this: you're sitting alone, replaying a conversation in your mind. You're analyzing every word, every pause, wondering if you said the wrong thing, wondering why you always seem to push people away. Sound familiar? Many of us find ourselves trapped in these cycles of negative thinking, especially when it comes to love and relationships. We question our worth, doubt our actions, and create walls so high that even the most genuine connections struggle to climb over them. But here's the truth: you are not your thoughts, and you are not defined by your past. Let's break free from this cycle together. Our thoughts are stories we write about ourselves. Some of these stories are empowering. I am kind, I am kind, I am capable, I am deserving of love, but others whisper insidiously, I'll never find someone who understands me, I'm too flawed, people always leave. Take a moment now. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable and think about the story you've been telling yourself. Is it one of love, hope, and connection, or is it filled with fear and self-doubt? Here's the good news: stories can be rewritten. They aren't set in stone. When you catch yourself thinking, I'll never be good enough, pause and challenge that thought. Ask yourself, is this absolutely true? The answer is almost always no. I know vulnerability can feel terrifying. Perhaps you've been hurt before, betrayed, misunderstood, or left standing in the wreckage of a relationship that you thought would last forever. It's natural to want to shield yourself, to think, if I don't let anyone in, I can't get hurt. Some people fear vulnerability because they equate it with weakness, but the truth is the opposite. It takes strength to let yourself be seen, to admit that you don't have all the answers, and to open yourself to the possibility of rejection. It's one of the bravest things you can do. Imagine a young woman who had always been afraid to share her struggles with her friends. She worried they would see her as a burden or think less of her. But when she finally confided in them about a difficult time in her life, something unexpected happened. They didn't turn away, they leaned in. They shared their own stories, their own vulnerabilities, and in that moment she realized she wasn't alone. This is what vulnerability does. It fosters connection, mutual understanding, and the kind of relationships that are worth having. It's not easy, but it is always worth it. Letting go of the past is one of the hardest things we can do. Often the pain of past heartbreaks, betrayals, or disappointments clings to us like a heavy weight. We tell ourselves that holding on to it keeps us safe. If we remember the hurt, the mistakes, and the losses, we think we can protect ourselves from ever experiencing them again. But in reality, carrying the past with us only makes it harder to move forward. It creates barriers, not boundaries. It keeps us stuck in fear, instead of allowing us to step into the love and happiness we deserve. Picture someone walking through life with a backpack full of stones. Each stone represents a moment of hurt, a breakup, a betrayal, a cruel word. The bag gets heavier and heavier, slowing them down, draining their energy, and making every step feel like a struggle. But when they stop and open the bag, they realize something profound they don't have to carry at all. They can choose which stones to set down, one by one, until they feel light enough to move freely again. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the pain never happened or dismissing the lessons it taught you. It means releasing the hold it has over you. It means choosing not to let past wounds define your future. This is not an act of denial. It's an act of empowerment. Forgiveness is often a key part of letting go. Many people misunderstand forgiveness as condoning someone's actions or allowing them back into your life. But forgiveness is not about the other person, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your peace by deciding that their actions will no longer control your emotions or dictate your choices. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you're saying what they did was okay. It means you're choosing to free yourself from the anger, resentment, and pain that keep you tied to the past. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. We replay moments where we feel we failed, made the wrong choice, or caused harm. We punish ourselves over and over, thinking it will somehow make up for what happened. But self-forgiveness is not about excusing your actions, it's about accepting that you are human. You made mistakes, yes, but those mistakes do not define your worth. Letting go is a process and it takes time. Start by identifying what you're holding on to. Is it a grudge against someone who hurt you? A regret about something you said or did? Or perhaps a belief that you'll never recover from a past loss? Whatever it is, acknowledge it, name it. You can't let go of something if you don't first recognize that it's there. Then take small steps toward release. This might mean writing a letter to the person you're struggling to forgive, even if you never send it. It might mean speaking kindly to yourself when self-blame creeps in. It might mean seeking support from a friend, a therapist, or a journal as you process your feelings. Letting go doesn't happen all at once. It's a journey of unburdening yourself, of choosing to set down the weight that no longer serves you. With each step, you create more space in your heart for new experiences, new connections, and new possibilities. Gratitude is one of the most transformative practices we can embrace. It shifts our focus from what's missing in our lives to what we already have. It's easy to get caught up in negativity, thinking about the things that didn't go as planned, the opportunities we missed, or the ways we feel others have let us down. But when we focus on gratitude, we redirect our attention to the abundance around us, even in the smallest of moments. It's not about ignoring challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to see the good alongside the difficulties. Imagine waking up in the morning and feeling overwhelmed by the stress of the day ahead. Deadlines, responsibilities, and worries cloud your mind. But then you pause and take a moment to notice the soft warmth of your bed, the sunlight streaming through the window, or the quiet hum of life beginning outside. Suddenly, those small, beautiful details remind you that there's more to your life than the challenges you face. This is the power of gratitude. It pulls you into the present and helps you find joy in the here and now. Gratitude is particularly important in relationships. When we're constantly focusing on what we wish someone would do differently or the ways they've fallen short, it's easy to forget why we value them in the first place. Over time, this can create distance and resentment. But when we actively practice gratitude, we begin to see people through a kinder, more appreciative lens. We notice the thoughtful gestures, the laughter they bring into our lives, and the countless small ways they show they care. Take, for example, a couple who had fallen into the habit of criticizing each other. They were quick to point out flaws, but rarely acknowledged the positive things the other did. Their connection felt strained, and both partners started to feel unappreciated. One day they decided to try and exercise every evening. They would each share one thing they were grateful for about the other. At first it felt forced, but over time something remarkable happened. They began to look for the good in each other, not just at the end of the day, but throughout it. Their gratitude rewired their focus, and their relationship began to flourish. Gratitude isn't just something you feel, it's something you express. When you take the time to tell someone, "I appreciate how you always listen to me," or "Thank you for making me laugh when I needed it most," it strengthens your bond. It shows the other person that their efforts are seen and valued. And here's the beautiful part: expressing gratitude doesn't just uplift the recipient, it also boosts your own sense of connection and positivity. Gratitude also extends to yourself. How often do you acknowledge the effort you've put into your own growth? How often do you thank your body for carrying you through the day, your mind for its resilience, or your heart for continuing to seek love and connection? Practicing self-gratitude is just as important as appreciating others. It nurtures a sense of self-worth and reminds you that even in your imperfections, you are deserving of kindness. The practice of gratitude doesn't require grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It's found in the small, everyday moments: a smile from a stranger, the taste of your favorite meal, or the feeling of a loved one's hand in yours. By focusing on these moments, you create a mindset of abundance, and that abundance can transform the way you experience your relationships, your challenges in your life. Kindness is one of the most powerful and underestimated tools for creating deeper connections and transforming relationships. It seems simple, even obvious, but in the rush and stress of daily life, we often overlook the profound impact of small acts of kindness. We get caught up in our routines, our frustrations, and our assumptions about others, and we forget how much a kind word, a thoughtful gesture, or even a moment of patience can mean to someone. I think about the last time someone was unexpectedly kind to you. Maybe a stranger held the door open when your hands were full, or a friend texted you just to say they were thinking of you. Perhaps it was something as simple as a compliment, or someone listening to you with their full attention. How did that moment make you feel? Now imagine the ripple effect when you intentionally bring that same energy into your own interactions. Kindness is not just about grand gestures. It's found in the everyday moments, offering a smile to someone who looks tired, thanking the cashier who rings up your groceries, or asking a coworker how they're really doing. These small actions might seem insignificant, but to the person on the receiving end, they can make all the difference. They say, "I see you, you matter." In relationships, kindness acts as the glue that holds people together. It's easy to let irritations build up over time, especially with those closest to us. We might take their presence for granted or focus on their shortcomings instead of their strengths. But when we choose to lead with kindness, we create an atmosphere of warmth and safety. We remind the people we care about that they are valued, even on the days when life feels heavy. I think about a time when you felt truly connected to someone. Was it because they were perfect, poised, and had everything together? Or was it because they showed you their real self, their fears, their dreams, their struggles? Vulnerability creates intimacy because it is honest and raw. When someone shares their authentic self, it invites you to do the same. But embracing vulnerability can feel like stepping into the unknown. Take, for example, a man who avoided expressing his emotions in relationships because he believed it made him look weak. He thought, if I share how I really feel, they'll think less of me, or worse, use it against me. So he kept his feelings locked away, and while his relationships looked fine on the surface, they lacked depth. It wasn't until he found the courage to say, "I'm scared I'm not enough," that he realized something profound. Instead of judgment, he was met with compassion. Instead of rejection, he was met with understanding. That single act of vulnerability transformed his connection into something far richer and more meaningful. Vulnerability doesn't have to start with grand confessions. It's in the small moments, admitting when you're tired instead of pretending to be okay, asking for help when you're struggling, or sharing a story that makes you feel a little exposed. Each time you let down your guard, you show others that you trust them. And trust is the foundation of any strong relationship. Of course, vulnerability is not without risk. There will be moments when it feels uncomfortable, and yes, there may be times when it isn't reciprocated. But the alternative, hiding behind a mask of invulnerability, comes at an even greater cost. It creates distance, it builds walls, it keeps you from experiencing the depth of connection you crave. Let me share a story. There was a woman who often felt unappreciated by her partner. She believed that her efforts went unnoticed, and resentment began to grow. One day, instead of waiting for her partner to change, she decided to focus on being kinder. She started leaving little notes of encouragement, thanking him for small things he did, and speaking with a softer tone when they disagreed. At first it felt one-sided, but over time her kindness shifted the dynamic. Her partner began to mirror her actions, and the resentment that had been building between them started to dissolve. Kindness doesn't require perfection. It's not about always saying or doing the right thing, it's about the intention behind your actions. Even when you make mistakes, approaching others with humility and a willingness to make amends can be an act of profound kindness. Another aspect of kindness is listening, truly listening. Often when someone shares their thoughts or feelings, we're quick to respond, solve, or compare. But kindness means giving someone the gift of being heard without judgment or interruption. It's about making space for their experience and showing them that their voice matters. Kindness is also contagious. When you show kindness to someone, they are more likely to pass it on. This ripple effect can brighten not only individual lives, but entire communities. It's a cycle of positivity that begins with one small act. Practicing kindness doesn't just benefit others, it changes you too. It softens your heart, shifts your perspective, and reminds you of the good in the world. It's a way of reconnecting with your own humanity and the humanity of those around you. Love is not a destination, it's a journey. We often grow up with stories that tell us love is something we find like a treasure waiting for us at the end of a map. These stories promise that once we've found it, everything will fall into place, and we'll live happily ever after. But real love, the kind that transforms and sustains us, is not something you stumble upon and keep effortlessly. It's a continuous process of growth, learning, and effort. It evolves as we evolve, and its depth is shaped by the care and attention we give it. Imagine a garden. When you first plant seeds, it's exciting. You picture the flowers that will bloom, the lush greenery that will fill the space. But if you stop tending to it, what happens? The weeds creep in, the soil dries out, and the garden you dreamed of becomes unrecognizable. Love is much the same. The initial excitement can fade if we don't nurture it. Yet when we consistently tend to it, love flourishes into something more beautiful than we could have imagined. This journey requires effort, but effort isn't a burden, it's a gift. It's showing up for the people you care about, even when it's inconvenient. It's choosing to have the tough conversations instead of sweeping issues under the rug. It's being willing to apologize, to forgive, and to start again when mistakes are made. These acts of effort are what keep love alive. Growth is also a fundamental part of love's journey. No one enters a relationship fully formed. We carry our own fears, insecurities, and past wounds. So does the other person. Love doesn't erase those things, but it creates a space where healing and growth become possible. It challenges us to confront our fears and to become better versions of ourselves. Take, for instance, a couple who found themselves arguing over the same issues repeatedly. Each felt stuck, blaming the other for their problems. But when they both committed to growth, everything changed. They learned to listen without defensiveness, to express their needs without accusations, and to approach each other with empathy. Their love deepened because they were willing to grow individually and together. This journey isn't without its challenges. There will be times when love feels hard, when misunderstandings arise, when life throws unexpected difficulties your way, or when the spark seems to dim. These moments don't mean the love is gone. They're invitations to reconnect, to adapt, and to rediscover what brought you together in the first place. Love also requires patience. Growth doesn't happen overnight, and neither does lasting connection. Just as a tree takes years to reach its full height, relationships take time to develop their strength and resilience. Along the way, it's important to celebrate the small milestones, the moments of laughter, the acts of kindness, the times when you showed up for each other. This journey of love is not about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about the daily choices to care, to give, to trust, and to believe in each other, even when it's difficult. Each step forward, no matter how small, brings you closer to the kind of love that endures and thrives. Believing in your inherent worthiness of love and connection is one of the most important shifts you can make. Too often people carry the belief that love is something they must earn, that they must prove themselves worthy through their actions, their appearance, or their accomplishments. They compare themselves to others, believing they fall short, or they look at their past mistakes as evidence that they don't deserve to be loved. This mindset creates a cycle of self-doubt that not only affects how they see themselves, but also how they approach relationships. Imagine a person who believes they are unworthy of love. Every compliment they receive is dismissed. When someone expresses care or affection, they doubt its sincerity, thinking they're just being polite. They don't mean it. This constant rejection of kindness isn't because they don't want love. It's because they've convinced themselves that they don't deserve it. This belief becomes a wall, keeping them from fully experiencing the connection they long for. But the truth is this: you are worthy of love simply because you exist. Your worth is not tied to what you've achieved, what you look like, or how others perceive you. It is inherent. It cannot be taken away by a mistake, a failure, or a moment of weakness. Love and connection are your birthright, as much as they are anyone else's. Believing this starts with how you speak to yourself. What do you say when you look in the mirror? Do you criticize your reflection, focusing on every perceived flaw? Or do you offer yourself kindness, even in small ways? The words you use with yourself matter deeply. When you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough, replace it with, I'm doing my best, and that's enough. When you think, no one could ever love me, remind yourself, I am deserving of love, just as I am. These small shifts in language create a foundation of self-compassion, which is the first step toward believing in your worthiness. Another part of embracing your worthiness is letting go of the belief that you must be perfect to be loved. No one is perfect. We all have flaws, insecurities, and moments we're not proud of. But love is not about perfection, it's about connection. The people who truly care about you will love you for who you are, not for some idealized version of you. Think about a child. When a baby is born, we don't look at them and say, you need to prove you're worthy of love. We love them unconditionally, simply because they are. That same unconditional worthiness doesn't disappear as we grow older. It's still within you, even if you've forgotten how to see it. Believing in your worth also means allowing yourself to be vulnerable in relationships. When you hide your true self out of fear of rejection, you deny others the chance to love you fully. Opening up and letting others see your authentic self is an act of courage that affirms your belief in your worthiness. As you begin to embrace your worth, you'll notice a shift, not just in how you see yourself, but in how others respond to you. Confidence in your own value creates a sense of ease and openness that draws people toward you. It's not about arrogance or proving anything, it's about knowing deep down that you are enough.